So here we have a Victorian house. The rear section of house is detached from the neighbour. There's dampness on the staircase that's in line with the stairs up. Now, it's going to be caused by condensation, but whether it's been made worse by damp-proofers treatment or whether it's just pure condensation is difficult to tell. You can see from the thermal image that there's a lot of heat loss above the staircase. When we look in underneath the staircase, we can see that it's an unheated section of wall that is vulnerable to dampness through condensation. Looking on the outside, although there are cracks, I don't think those are causing penetrating damp. This is looking at a thermal image of the outside, and we can see that there's heat loss in line with the staircase.
I think previously the water was sitting there and coming through, and now it's draining down and coming through maybe. But...
So these cracks aren't great,
No.
but I don't believe they're causing your internal dampness, but they could be a contributory factor.
Okay.
So if it were going all the way through, you would see a brown stain,
Right.
but you don't. But what happens is that even thin cracks can draw in a lot of moisture through capillary action because they're very fine holes, so it can actually draw in a lot. Typically a vertical crack like that will draw in less than a horizontal. So if you're looking at this crack here, the water as it comes down, so this is impermeable, so any rain water will just accumulate down the wall, and if it finds a crack that goes all the way through the plaster, the render, it sucks it in.
Right.
But what will tend to happen is that either this doesn't go the whole way through, it's just superficial, or it dampens the external brick and causes heat loss. A damp brick is a poor insulator, so it causes heat loss.
Right.
But essentially what you've got is condensation on the inside. If it was coming through, it'd be brown. If it was coming from the base or up above, you would have a brown stain. It's all to do with heat loss, and it's to do with internal vapor, and we'll be looking at the data log as that will tell us a lot.
Yeah.
But I'll do some thermal imaging now.
Okay, cool.
So why the French drain makes it worse is because you've got water settling down close to the wall for longer, so it creates the extra dampness at the base of the brick.
Right.
So it increases the dampness in the external skin and then creates extra heat loss, even if it's below the damp-proof course. It doesn't matter whether it's below or above the damp-proof course. It increases the risk of condensation. So if you're getting condensation anyway, I mean, so this will be presumably the damp-proof course is there. So this is well below the damp-proof course. So you're still getting it. So it's a bit of a misnomer. It was invented by somebody called Mr. French, nothing to do with France, and probably the original intention had merit. I don't know, but if you look, there's some interesting things posted by Historic England on it. But basically, it makes it worse because what happens is water pours in here. It gets evaporation is stopped by these chips, and so you end up having water up against the wall for longer. But if you had a patio there, it would be better because water is less likely to stay up. It's likely to drain away.
Yeah, because his theory, which I totally bought into at the time stupidly, was the water was sitting here because the slight tilt of this patio is towards this corner, so the water was sitting in the corner, and if you put the French drain in, then the water will just drain away. Well, essentially, kind of.
I mean, actually, the best thing is what's called an ACO drain, which actually does drain, but it has to be linked to the water drain.
Could it be linked to this drain?
Yeah, presumably there's a drain there.
Yeah.
So an ACO drain is the best drain.
Yeah.
But again, it's not your root cause. Your root cause is condensation. So
that's fine.
They look very similar. They look like rising damp, but but most damp will settle down at the base of the wall through gravity. So all damp looks like rising damp eventually.
Yeah.
But yeah. Okay. Bit of a video. So even though it's not great for them, having paint along that area will reduce the amount of moisture getting into the wall. So if you see the property 2 before this, you'll see almost identical problem. But in that one, I'm recommending that they put in a barrier that reduces the amount of water that it can be absorbed into the brick. So the problem when you've got two materials, in this case for them, they have an issue, which is probably why they think they had rising damp, is because water gets in behind the paint's impermeable, can't evaporate out, so it goes inside. I mean, they've actually, there's about 50-50 here. But it would explain why they had rising damp like symptoms. 50% paint, 50% non-paint.
But then I guess it gets stuck under here, and like here where they go in there and they get stuck. Yeah.
So this is on the neighbour side of the wall, where dampness persists despite damp-proofing treatment. But the damp-proofing treatment is there to hide the moisture rather than deal with the root cause. The root cause will be the paint, as explained earlier.
To the rest of the house.
It's cold, yeah. Well, I mean, so you've got, there's mold. So you've got risk. The reason you're getting it here, you can often get it at the top. The reason you're getting it here is because twofold. One is it's on the corner of the building, so you get heat loss. You got extra surface area on the outside, but also because you've got things in the way. You've got lack of airflow, air currents from the heating system, so it's just going to be colder, and it's fat.
Back on your side, we're using a damp meter in radio frequency mode. This is one that I recommend you get. It's called Dr. Meter, costs about £23, and it's a very good way of testing to see whether the wall is drying out by logging in the same place, perhaps once a week or once a month, and just making sure that my recommendations work. This is looking through a thermal imaging camera. You can see the temperature of the corner is considerably lower than that of the rest of the property, 10.2. We found the dew point on the data logger was above 12, so it's at risk of condensation during the survey and at risk of mould. Mould grows where relative humidity goes above 85% for a prolonged period of time.
Even though you've got a dehumidifier. Well, I'm guessing
Facing the wrong way now.
no, I don't think that's necessarily an issue, but it is actually creating airflow. But it's putting the curtain. Once the curtain's there, you're trapping the vapour against the cold wall, and vapour moves through diffusion.
I mean, technically,
but it will be the same in behind here. But vapour moves through diffusion, whereas heat tends to move through air currents in the internal setting.
Okay.
But this would be one of the. So turning the heat down will reduce the vapour and be the same temperature inside.
There are 4 primary sources of vapour in the residential environment. There's cooking that provides about 1/4 litre per person per day. Here there's no extractor fan, despite it being in place, it's not ducted out. Drying clothes provides about 1/2 litre per person per day, and drying internally like a lazy Sheila will increase the vapour production. Respiration about 3/4 litre per person per day, and showers about 1/2 litre per shower.
So condensing dryers, you get vapour coming out of the back quite a lot. So I don't know this particular brand, but often I find condensation at the back of these condensing dryers.
Do you want to have a look? Or?
Yeah, let's do that.
Like it comes and goes. It basically sticks to the wall sometimes.
It's not especially high at the moment, but I think you're right, and obviously drying clothes internally. So you can use data loggers to establish if you're getting vapour at the back of dehumidifier. So I'll show you that now.
Although the bathroom extractor fan has potential to run at 15 litres a second as required, because of the restriction outside, it's only running at about half its natural speed.
An old air brick to vent out, which is better than nothing, but you're not going to get the same through flow of air.
Right.
To show you how easy it is to change. So this is set to 5 minutes. This has got a humidistat, which is set to, it seems to be between, it seems to be 40%. If that's true, then it's not working very well. Or it could be 80%. Either way, what I'll do is I'll just see how far I can take it. I know it's done. Oh, there we go. So it was. I'll change that one for. Oh, I'll get a better. So I'm moving that from 5 minutes to. I'm going to guess this is a fairly old fan because it's not turning very easily. Well, let's put it to 25 minutes. Okay, so that's 50. I'm showing you this as you may want to choose to change it. But it looks fine. I'll give it a bit of a clean up, but I think it's just to be honest, it could be that it's just a bit old. But if you keep the door closed and the fan on for half an hour, which it should do now, then
and the window open at the same time.
Yeah, yes and no. It doesn't make a huge difference. So the key thing is to get rid of the vapour with the door closed. Ideally, keep the door closed throughout, but you can. Some people like to have the light coming through.
Yeah, that's fine too.
Water bottle. What should we do with that? Should we just suck the water out of the bottle? Just put it somewhere else?
I wouldn't worry. I mean, that's going to be relatively small amount, but plants do. So any amount of water that you're putting into plants comes back out as respiration or evaporation. Any amount that you're giving to your animals, but it's going to be minor. But it all goes in the same direction. I'm just going to show you the dew point on here. So it's now showing a dew point of 13.3 and 12.8, and yet the external temperature is probably about 5 degrees centigrade. So you're way over what you should be.
Right.
The external dew point is going to be below 5. It's going to be about 2 or 3 at the moment.
Right. Okay.
So if it was a well ventilated property, your internal dew point would be the same as the external dew point, but clearly it isn't. So
how do you do this? How do you ventilate without it just being the same temperature as outdoors? What's the thing that, or is it just not really? Do you know what I mean? Like, if you open the windows, it's more ventilated, but then it's just cold.
Yeah, no, exactly. But a dehumidifier will do that.
Fine.
I'll show you my own now.
Another beer.
So I'm going to give you some hacks on bringing your humidity down.
Yeah.
Dew point is a exact proxy for vapor pressure.
Right.
And what you want to do is you want to bring the dew point, and you'll see it on the data loggers, down to below the external temperature. If you're below that, you don't have a risk of condensation and mold. So something to aim for, and you'll need to do. I'll give you four simple hacks. So cooking food, obviously long term you want to put in an extractor fan, but short term, put tops on pots and pans. So for instance here you had a lot of steam coming out, but if you had a top on it, you can reduce the temperature. It's still 100 degrees centigrade when it's boiling, but it's producing about 80% less vapor. So you can dramatically reduce the vapor from here. Drying clothes, don't use the lazy Sheila when it's when you're not opening the windows and doors constantly.
So this is the one time you would use it, because we just dry stuff outside if it's...
but use the dehumidifier. Simple as.
Okay.
With the bathroom extractor fan, I'm going to go and see if I can improve it.
Right.
It's running at about half a bit less than half, about 30%.
Oh, really?
But
yeah.
it should be 15 litres a second. It's about 6.5 or something.
Okay.
There's a good reason why it's low, but I'm going to see
Yeah.
if I can improve it anyway.
Okay. Oh, that sounds good.
And it should last for at least 30 minutes.
Right.
And it's lasting about 1 to 2 minutes, so it's just not long enough. But
No wonder it's
also,
getting worse in there. Yeah.
also
Yeah.
make sure to keep the door closed,
Yeah.
because you want the vapor to go out and not
Into the
in.
house. Yeah.
And then the other one is much harder to do, but so there are 4 sources of vapor. There's cooking, which is about 1/4 of a litre per person per day.
Right.
There's drying clothes, which is about 1/2 litre per person per day.
Yeah.
Showering, about 1/2 litre per person per day, and respiration. Now, respiration is tougher with young ones, especially.
Yeah.
But since COVID, there've been a lot more people at home during the day, and so obviously windows is great. You've got the trickle vents. I can see they're closed, and I'm going to make sure that they're open. But use also a dehumidifier. Dehumidifier is a very simple. Great thing about dehumidifier is they work like air source heat pumps. For every pound of energy you put in, you get £1.50 back.
Right.
And so it's much more environmentally friendly than using an electric heater, for example.
Okay.
The other thing is that the humid environment feels colder to the human. So naturally, we'll put the heating up when we feel humid. So if you get the humidity out, if you get the vapor out of the air, you can turn the thermostat down, and you can save energy and CO2 and so on.
Brilliant.
But the other thing is that if you do choose to have one room colder than another room, or it's colder because of insulation, so for instance the back room, if you're working from the back room, you're producing vapor there, and yet it's poorly heated, especially behind the seating. So a way around that is to run a dehumidifier. And if you don't like running it so I have a place that I have 4 dehumidifiers running constantly, but I often sit with the dehumidifier when it's cold outside. I sit with the dehumidifier between my legs, and it's just a little rumble in the background, keeps my feet nice, and it keeps my legs warm. And it's just, it's doing everything at the same time.
So you do need more than one, because I was saying we've got one over there.
I think your one, if I can say, is perhaps on the oldish side and maybe not as efficient as modern ones, but I'll give you some recommendations on that.
Do suggest them. That's just one from somebody else that we got as an emergency.
Yeah, it's useful.
Okay, that's good.
In conclusion, like about 85% of damp properties, the issues here are condensation related from excess vapor deriving from insufficient ventilation. Also, there are some areas of thermal bridging, but the root cause is the excess vapor. It isn't rising damp. Majority of properties that are diagnosed as having rising damp are caused by condensation and not rising damp. Rising damp is groundwater, and it's very rare to find it in the UK, and certainly not in London where they pump it out. Now I want you to focus on dew points. You'll see the 2 graphs here. The left-hand graph is the absolute vapor level, and the right-hand graph is dew point. You'll see they're identical, and that is because the dew point is an exact proxy for vapor pressure. What I'd like you to do is focus on dew points, find out the external temperature, either by looking at the thermometer or by looking up the website. BBC or Met Office will have the external temperature, and bringing the dew point down by increasing the targeting of ventilation, cooking, drying clothes, showering, and to some degree respiration, including plants. And if you can't bring dew points down to the external temperature with ventilation alone, then use dehumidification, such as with a dehumidifier. The right-hand graph here is my own property, and you'll see that the dew point is more or less the external temperature all the time, and I use a dehumidifier.